So nice to see so many of you on the call tonight. So my name is Stef Cybichowski. I don't know if anybody has heard of my name before. I've been around the three principles understanding for about, let me see, 12 years now. And what I do for a living is I share this understanding of the three principles to businesses. I share it in schools with children and teachers. I share it in charity organizations, and it is the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life. So I really, really love connecting with you guys and having the opportunity to kind of not just to share what I've seen, but to hear what other people have experienced and to help people have a more beautiful, meaningful, connective experience of life. I have found that this understanding has completely transformed my relationships with family, with friends, with partners, to the point where I feel unrecognizable to myself now. I used to be very, very self-conscious. I used to be very socially anxious. I used to be very nervous around people. And when I first came to this understanding, the exercise that you guys will be doing later on, I had an experience of this exercise before this happened, before I knew anything about the principles, before I knew anything about where my experience comes from in life and who we really are. So I did this exercise and I came away with a completely different understanding of how I could show up with people. And the first person I wanted to do this with was my dad, who for 50 years I'd had a really difficult relationship with, really difficult. My dad seemed to me to be from another age. He had lots and lots of ideas and isms that I felt I didn't agree with personally. So we had a very difficult, fractious relationship. And later on in his life, it came to me to take care of him. I would visit him in his apartment and I would do his shopping, I would do his cleaning, I would do some cooking for him, which was, God's way of saying I needed to learn a lesson, I think. I remember standing outside the door before I would go in to see my dad, and I would be praying that it would be over quickly, because my dad was a very angry person. He was a very frustrated person, and he would take his anger and his frustration out on his family and friends. And because I was the one that saw him so much, was me a lot of the time. So I would go in and I would start doing what I was doing, and I would try and close my ears. But on this day, after I had done this exercise in listening, and we'll explain it later, but this is the effect that it had. I sat down in front of my dad and I listened to him without trying to fix him, without trying to disagree with him, without trying to agree with him. I just listened. And I noticed in myself, as I was listening to my own thinking, I could see that I had all these judgments about my dad. All these things over the years had felt really true to me, really concrete. I had all these ideas about him that when I actually saw them as being thoughts instead of the absolute truth, I had the opportunity to just lay them aside for the course of the conversation. And what happened when I lay them aside, instead of actively kind of getting involved in those thoughts, when I just let them go for that time, something happened with my dad. My dad started off being very angry and shouting at me and berating me for something or other. And I didn't react. I just listened. He would tell me about things that he didn't want to do and was desperate to to get out of his system. And I still just listened. I didn't agree or disagree. I asked the odd question, but what I noticed was that over the space of 2 hours, he went from being angry and frustrated and shouting at me to becoming more and more reflective, because I wasn't getting in the way. I wasn't trying to fix him. I wasn't trying to disagree with him. And what I noticed was that his mind was slowing down. It's what happens when we slow down, we get more reflective. We get less caught up in the emotion of the moment. He started talking about the war that he'd been in, and he'd never spoken about that. I kind of saw there was a point where he said he was talking about not wanting to go see the doctor. He was like in his 90s at this point. And in my listening, what I saw was that the reason he didn't want to go to the doctors was because he was afraid of being sent to hospital and never coming home again. Now, he never said that to me. And this was something that I I could see for the first time that I couldn't see before, when my mind was so full of judgment. So something happens with us when we slow down and when we begin to listen from a deeper part of us, from a deeper place. We become much more sensitive to what people aren't saying. And by the end of the conversation, to cut a very long story short, he put his hand out to me and put it on my lap, and he said, "Do you know?" He said, "I never thought you could love me so much." He never used the word love to me before. And I'm not going to say that, um, he was never angry at me again, or I'm not going to say that I wasn't judgmental of him again, but it completely changed our relationship. He lived for another 6 years, something like that, and our relationship for that 6 years was completely transformed. There is a connection that we all have. Only thing that gets in the way are the stories that we make up about ourselves and about other people. Now, I'm not saying that, my dad wasn't the way he was, but my perception of him changed. I began to see a different person. And when I saw that different person, I was so much more compassionate, so much more loving, so much more understanding. So that experience for me was the absolute proof that this understanding that we share, that we're going to talk about, is the most powerful force in our relationships with, not just with family, but with partners, with kids, with everybody. When we can show up and we can listen from that deeper place, the deeper place in us, which is it's not our intellect, it's not our ego, it's not our ideas about who we are and what life is. It's something bigger. It's a bigger game. And in that space, that's where love is. That's where kindness, compassion, creativity, inspiration, joy, that's the place that all those qualities emanate from. And what we do, what I certainly did, sometimes still do now, is that I gave my intellect the job of being the master, and I gave that deeper part of me the job of being the slave, the emissary. So for me, my my work, my life has been to get to understand the the way that it works, to get to understand the way that my mind, the way that all our minds really work, and what is possible when we can use the intellect for what it's meant to be used for, not to run the show. That's how we create hope and possibility. That's how we can live more meaningful, more profound, have a deeper experience of life. That's been my direct experience. I'm not just quoting from a book. This is how it's worked for me. So what we would really, really love is for you guys to begin to get a taste of what's on the table and what's on offer here.
What a great story, Steph. What a great story. You know, I think I know I can relate. I'm sure everybody on the call can relate that, because we've all had moments like that. You know, my dad is also gone, and I would hear the same story, but it was a remarkable story about something that occurred in the war. Maybe I'll tell it at some time. He was in the Second World War as well, and he was 18 at the time. Remarkable story. I mean, the fact that I'm here was, you know, had to do with this story. But I won't go into that now. At some point I'll share it because it's a real tearjerker. But what I do want to share is, you know, the value of what Steph just showed us is for everyone on the planet. It's not just for the Three Principles community, although that is obviously, you know, what has carried this forward to the point that it's gone out into the world so far. And it's just going out like gangbusters, because people are seeing the results. You have to see for yourself, like Steph said, you have to experience what we're talking about. Otherwise, it's just empty words. It doesn't mean anything until you've had the experience yourself and you realize, whoa, that must be what Steph was talking about. That must be what Lori was, that must be what Sid Banks was talking about. Because that's happened to me in my life. You know, something will happen. And that's when I realized what Sid meant when he said, don't listen to my words, listen for a beautiful feeling. Because that's where the wisdom is, in this beautiful feeling of, oh my gosh, I know that when I was up in my intellect thinking about all the isms, I love that about your story, Steph, the isms that your dad would talk about. It's really easy to get caught up in somebody else's perspective, somebody's view of life. So easy. But when you step back from the perspective, from interpreting the words, you see so much deeper. You see through feeling, through experience, through life experience, and the feeling that brings to you. So I just want to say a little bit about these three principles: mind, thought, and consciousness. A very little bit about it, because again, it's not in the words. But for me, mind, thought, and consciousness is what helped me understand the books I had read in my 20s from these masters, wise masters, you know, names are not coming to mind, but you know, people that we've all read. And I could grasp a little bit of what was in the books or what I heard in a lecture. But it wasn't until I grasped some understanding of how we take, as humans, we have the capacity to take formless energy and bring it into this world of form. This, you know, my glasses form, my headset form, my, you know, the thing I'm looking at form, the brain I'm using form, that's physical. But there is this invisible something, energy, you know, that's the word I can put to it. Others have different words, that will give us what we need when we get out of the way. It will give us what we need when we get out of the way. And when I first came on the screen, we decided, Steph and I said, we're going to get on 20 minutes early and everything's going to, we're just going to chat. Well, I decided to switch, I don't have to go into the whole thing, but it was like a technological nightmare. In the past, before my understanding of how mind, thought, and consciousness work, I would have like flipped out. But no, I just knew, you take it over. I'll hand over the switch to you, Steph, um and it worked out because I cleared my mind and I saw which chip to put into what of the 6 ports, Um, yeah, it's remarkable. It really, understanding that thought as a principle gives us the ability to think. What we think is what's totally up for grabs. Like Steph was thinking, oh, here my father goes again with all the isms. Or I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've heard this story like a few times now, Dad, And it never occurred to me to say, I want to know more about the war. My God, I want to know more about your experience. That never occurred to me. You know how many times I wished I did, since he's passed away. Yeah. So being present to what is being brought to you without your interpretation of it, because we could use the word principle and people will see principle ending in PAL, like the principal of a school, or 7 principles to have a good day, or, there's a lot of that on social media, but a principle is like the principle of gravity. It's the same for everybody, no matter where you are on the planet. Absolutely the same for everybody. And gaining whatever level of understanding, and Steph will attest to this, others on the call will attest to this, that you look at the tip of the iceberg and you start seeing deeper and deeper and deeper. There's no end. Like, I've been around this community since 1985. And I'm seeing more in the last year than I did all those previous years. So yes, it's great to have a community. And when I first heard community, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is a cult. But it's just people sharing what they have come to see. There's no head of the cult. Now, there is a person, a very ordinary person who's no longer alive. His name is Sidney Banks, who's a welder in Scotland. Why something so profound should come through such an ordinary person, that's up for grabs. You could think whatever you want to think about that. But what I realize is, not only did it make me pay more attention, ultimately, I paid no attention at first because I'm wanting initials after his name, MD, PhD, blah, blah, blah. There are no initials after his name. There's no initials for professional welder. We don't need initials. We all have wisdom available to us if we get out of our own way. And that was why Steph and I decided to speak to a hope and possibility, because that's life. Life is unending possibilities, always available. We just block it off with our personal thinking, ego, whatever you want to call it.
Thanks for that, Laurie. That was a beautiful explanation. I'm really interested to see why people are here and what they're hearing and what would be useful for them.
Me too. Thank you.
Steph, hi. Thank you very much for your introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. We
Okay.
can.
Yes.
My name is Brian. This is my wife, Jan. We're from Cedar Mill, Oregon, USA. And we had the pleasure of attending one of Lori's conferences in Boston last fall, learn about deep listening. And I got to say that if you had been there delivering the story about your father that you just delivered in just the way you delivered it with your nice pauses, um, I think I would have gotten into it quicker than I did. I loved the program. It was incredible. And I had some life-altering experiences there in being forced to sit with a complete stranger in a world, in a room and deeply listen and clear my mind, get rid of the judgmental things, the things we all do of what am I going to say in response to this? How am I going to help? All those things going out the window. It was like watching an Academy Award monologue, and it's that magical. And I've used it since. I need to use it more. But I just wanted to, I'm here just to continue to follow up on deep listening. I don't know my wife is as well. But I just wanted to say that if you could start every group of beginners the way you just did, I think it would make understanding deep listening accessible to a lot of folks because, boy, howdy, I lost my dad at 97 years of age last October.
Oh,
And could have used that conference before he passed, probably. And I have a tendency because I teach to talk over people sometimes or to anticipate what people are going to want to hear. And so thank you for that. It's just that's why I'm here. I'll leave it at that. Do you have anything to say, Jan?
just listening.
Okay, so thank you for your lead in.
Bless you, Brian. I felt that. Thank you. I really felt that. And I know what it's like to sit in a room, to be told to listen deeply, and for people to be talking about anything but anything that I knew about, because we're all so used to spending our time trying to get information and trying to sort it out in our head and trying to track what's being said so that we understand it. It took me a while, I think, to actually realize that all that stuff is being taken care of. I don't have to make notes and I don't have to act like I'm in college, trying to figure everything out. What I've noticed is that if it's not college, if it's not a subject that I need to learn in that way, if it's just listening to people, getting a sense of who people are and being able to connect on a deeper level with them, my intellect does get in the way when I'm trying to do all those things, when I just allow myself to soak in what's going on and not have to understand it or learn it, it kind of happens anyway. So bless you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you here. Thank you.
That's why stories are so powerful. Yeah. 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 Thank you, Brian. That was great. Who else? Why are you here and what are you curious about?
Well, hi, I'm Kinneret. Um, I'm here because first I've heard Stef at the listening conference in Prague. But Lori, I don't know you. I've never heard you, never, I've seen your name in the 3P GC, but I've never had any connection. I mean, like I don't know anything about Zero. So I was curious, I'm always curious about like also first generation people who studied with Sid and their understanding. So I said, I don't know. I'm just gonna show up. Yeah.
I'm so glad you did. Kinneret, am I saying it? Am I saying your name right? Where are you?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles.
LA. Oh, great.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And there's something about your presence that I'm appreciating. It's like a deep presence, even though things weren't as anticipated or expected for you before the call. You're still showing up with just a deep presence, and I seem to really appreciate that and take that in.
Mm.
Yeah, and so I'm just here. I don't know why, just to get to know you, but I am here. And Steph, I definitely appreciated your story.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank
a
you.
great reminder of what stillness and presence can do, and amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, stick around because we're going to have you going into different. Have you done any listening exercises in breakout rooms? Or you have, oh, at Prague. You did that in Prague, right?
Oh no, I
Oh,
was online, but I have done
Mhm.
listening. Thanks. Always
yeah.
helpful. Always a helpful reminder.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Thank
Wonderful.
you very much for that. I very much feel that this conversation and this space is truly sacred. I never forget just how lucky we are to be able to touch this space, and in touching this space we touch that deeper part of ourselves. We come into this moment, we become present, and then all those qualities that I was talking about earlier, they just begin to bubble up because they're always there. So bless you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I mean, it's an amazing reminder. I'm gonna say I have a type of a job when I'm driving a lot, and there's just a lot of things constantly to do and think and plan and remember and all of that. And when I'm in that stream of thinking, I'm not that present, and I always need the reminders to come back and get still.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
And that's what's so powerful about being part of a community and being in this conversation. There's so many ways to be in this conversation with like-minded people who want to learn more and they're curious about living a more connected life. Like we connect more with people when we're in that deeper space. And that was a beautiful description, Steph. Yeah, beautiful.
Who else would like to say hi?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello.
Hello, Stuart.
Hi. How is everybody? Good to see everybody. Why am I here? I always learn something new. Always. My mind is as I get more of a deeper understanding of the three principles, I find that there's always the possibility of going deeper. Always. And I really appreciated your story, Steph.
Yeah.
I can relate. I have an 86-year-old mom who's still alive and kicking. And I have three other siblings that are dealing with the same person,
Mm.
right?
Right, exactly.
And yet, I don't have to be told, but I know that she feels more comfortable talking to me than anybody else. And what is the reason for that? And I thought of it just now as everyone was sharing. I think that in some ways we can equate the listening to love, because that's what we're giving. When we're really listening and trying not to put our own thinking into it and really listening, it's a form of love. And nothing can defeat love. I'm sorry. I can't imagine anything that can defeat love at the end of the day. So you're gonna laugh at this. I've been called the mom whisperer in my family, right? And I actually feel for some of my other siblings who haven't been able to have that relationship, and it's only for one reason, and one reason only, is that their own thinking is getting in the way.
Yeah.
And that's what's so mind-boggling about the three principles, is that it's so simple. It's ridiculously simple. But our thinking is very complicated, and we can think thoughts upon thoughts upon thoughts. And so I do a group every Wednesday night with some people that are returning from being incarcerated. And I learn more from doing that group, just doing the group, than any classes or any, and look, I'm not saying that I'm not enjoying this, but I'm just saying there's a certain interaction that goes on with people that don't have any, or are first coming to this understanding. There's a certain beauty in it. So last night we were talking, and I was talking, and there was a gentleman that wanted to talk. So he raised his hand, and he kind of interrupted, and I'm doing this with somebody else, and they were kind of, in some ways, I don't want to say scolding, but trying to set some ground rules. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and this individual has a hard time expressing himself. Okay. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't have something to say. He's just having a hard time expressing it. So I felt like it was incumbent on me to really try to listen to what this person was saying. So he was saying that, it's natural for us to interrupt, right? Because that's what we do when we're in conversations. We have that tendency. It's like, that's what we all do. So we're trying to open up our minds to something different. And what he said was, he understood about him interrupting, but he said it's going to take practice. And I was like, yeah, he's right. So what we did was, the other person I'm doing the group with brought in like a religious object, and he said, okay, here's the object. When you want to speak, I'll hand it to you, and you'll have the floor. Because we were talking about how things are done in AA meetings and such and such. So we tried that, and even with that, it still, wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And I was like, the man is right. It does take practice. It does take, you're not going to get it on the first try. You may not get it on the second try. But as long as you have this understanding and what direction you're heading in, that makes all the difference. So I'm sitting there like I'm an authority, but I'm not. And that's what I try to tell them. I get just as much from this as you do. Just don't realize it
Yeah.
yet, and you will. Just keep coming, keep listening, keep interacting. And sometimes we do things in life and we don't know if we're having an impact or not. We're just doing it on faith, and then there are times when it kind of comes back to you, either directly or indirectly, and it's like it's irrefutable. It is true. And that's just something I want to share with everybody, because just keep doing it. Keep trying to get the deeper understanding. I know for me, I will try and do this for the rest of my life. As long as there's breath inside me, I will continue to do this. There is such beauty in all of us, even those that have been through the most horrific things. We have this natural resilience in all of us. And that's what I'm seeing in my experience. And it just blows me away. And then when someone actually lets me know, it's like, it's hard for me to fight back the tears. And I don't want to, because, they might get the wrong idea, but they're not tears of anger, or they're tears of joy. They're tears of just, wow. So yeah, I look forward to the listening session, because I always get something out of it, something that I didn't see before, in myself or another human being. And that's really what it's all about. So thank you for letting me share that.
Oh, beautiful, Stuart. Thank you. For people who don't know Stuart, he's runs something that is called I know the name. It's in New York. The Peace Project, the New York Peace Project. Yeah. Yeah, it's really something.
Thank
With
you.
mainly now with prisoners. Yeah. And to be able to see the soul inside, even, people who have committed terrible crimes, but they can come out and say, I can't believe, and this is a quote, I can't believe I had to come to prison to gain my freedom from my own thinking. How profound is that? Yeah, like whatever our thinking is, it doesn't look like it's our thinking. It looks like it's life. Like Stef's example of thinking his father is just so ornery and angry and upset and into all of his isms. And then what he heard was his father is just scared. His father feels insecure. He's concerned about what's going to happen. He doesn't want to go to a doctor because the doctor's going to send him to that horrible place called the hospital. And then you have compassion when you hear at that level that is so much deeper than hearing the isms. Oh God, here he is with his isms again. And I've done that. To this day, I can still get into that frame of mind. But man, it doesn't last long, because the feeling lets me know, oh, you're not on solid ground here, Lori. You got to get out of your head and just come back to your heart. So, should we start pairing you guys up? So here's the question. Here's the $1 million question. How was your listening? That's what we want to hear from you. How was your listening? What did you notice as the listener? So unmute yourself when you want to share.
as I was listening, I started crying. And not because of sadness, but because I felt the connection between one human being and another. And what was being spoken about was so profound and so unbelievable. And again, I said to the person, this is why I came here today.
Mm.
And I didn't even know about this today. I had no idea. I just saw the email and I was like, oh, okay, let me go. You know, I'm gonna check this out. And it's not like I haven't done listening groups before or done things with you before, Lori, but again, it's that curiosity. That curiosity. And we would go with that feeling of curiosity. It just leads us down roads that we just had no idea were even available or possible. So that's what I got out of it. And mind blown again.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Stuart.
And that was just on the question, favorite book or favorite movie? That's interesting. I'm
Oh,
curious
yeah.
about that. You don't have to give
Yeah.
up what the movie or the book was, but I'm curious what would lead you to tears, huh?
Well, that's up to the person that I shared with, but that's between us, but it was amazing.
Beautiful. So you were so into it, into hearing the story, that you found that you weren't in your own mind. You weren't in your own thoughts. Yeah, that's the answer, right? Don't get, what's that? Get out of your mind. Be out of your mind. Usually people think of that as not a good thing. Act as though you're out of your mind. Be out of your mind. That's kind of funny. So beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Who else? I was hoping somebody on here would not be so proficient at listening and was going to say, oh, I couldn't believe all the stuff that would enter my mind. Did that happen to anybody? Because that's what we would all be here like, yeah, I know exactly what she or he is talking about. The stuff that can enter my mind when I'm supposed to be listening.
Yeah, for me, it was both present and then the thought would come in about something, and then, maybe I'd leave for a moment and then remember to come back. So there was definitely a listening and an interest, um, and then there was sprinkles of other thoughts that would take me a different way.
Then what
And then I
happened?
come back.
What happened when you noticed there was a sprinkle?
I noticed it and I was like, oh, you went away. And
then
then I said, okay,
you
come back.
came back. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of how it works. Yeah. It's the noticing. See, noticing is sounds really ordinary, sounds really obvious, but noticing is a shift in consciousness. When you see something, when you get a perception of something that is higher perception than being lost in the thought, that's actually a shift in consciousness.
Yeah. And when I was present, there's definitely an interest in what was being said and a curiosity.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. Brilliant. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, curiosity is such a beautiful place to be, isn't it? Our ego gets quiet, our self-importance gets quiet, and we just get curious. What's going on for this other person?
I think curiosity, like Stuart said earlier, is a form of love.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you came back to that. Yes, Steph. Yeah. So glad you came back to that. Yeah, and thank you for that, Stuart. Absolutely. Listening, when we've called these things sometimes listening from love. But that's what happens when you're in that state of mind of just taking in the other person. One of the first times I did this was way back when. Jack and I did this to a group in Des Moines, Iowa. There were two middle-aged women. They were both married to men. They did a listening session. And when we got back to the big group, one of the women says, I can't believe it. I fell in love with this strange woman. It's a feeling of falling in love. You're falling into the depth of your own space of love. It's not falling in love with an object, falling in love with a being. It's that space of love that you're coming from.
Who else?
I, I too, when I was listening, all of a sudden she would say something and my mind would relate to what she said. And so I think, oh, yes, I like this author. And then I'd say to myself, oh, come back so you can hear more. It was like an interruption of commonality and appreciation, but yet I didn't want to stay in that out there space. I wanted to come back and hear more.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I was hoping somebody would say something along those lines, Jan. Absolutely true. That's what happens. Like we feel, like Steph was saying, you know, the brain thinks, well, if I interject that, I know what you're talking about. I have that experience also with this author. No, that's perfect. We get this thinking that that's connecting. No, we want to go back to listening. What's their connection with that author? It doesn't matter what our connection to the author is. So that was beautifully said, Jan. Thank you. Right? We could all relate. That's
Yeah.
what I love about the principles of experience, the human experience. We can relate to anything anybody can give us. Yeah, it might be at the one end of the continuum, like somebody killing somebody, but we've all gotten so irate that we've had the thought, I just want to kill you. You know, I mean, we don't take it seriously, but yeah, it's the human experience. Who else? Anybody else? We got 3 minutes till the end of 90 minutes. I can't believe we've been here for 90 minutes. It seems like about 15 to me. I want to keep going.
So I'd like to share something, an experience I had. I was asked to coach a young guy, I suppose he was probably mid-30s, with chronic schizophrenia. And the way his chronic schizophrenia presented was he just talked non-stop. He just couldn't stop talking. And I would have 2-hour sessions with him where I could not get a word in edgeways. I could not, nothing. I could not coach because he was constantly talking to me. And after probably 3 sessions, I said to his mum, look, this is way beyond my experience. I really don't think I'm doing a good job here. She said, oh, no. She said, don't stop. She said, I don't know what it is you're doing, but when I talk to him afterwards, he's different, less frustrated, less angry, or whatever. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had to do a talk to a group of people who said, like, you're the expert on coaching schizophrenics. I don't know what it is. I have got no idea because I'm not coaching, I'm not talking. And then after another couple of weeks, I actually got a word in with the guy. And I just managed to say to him, so what do you like this? What's different about this? And he said, before he carried on with his stuff, he said, you're the only person in my world who doesn't want to fix me.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Wow.
And I got to see that when we show up, like you guys were showing up, without judgment, without the agenda, without needing to fix somebody, when we just show up as a human being and we share that space, they feel it.
Yeah.
It's in the energy, it's in the connection. People feel it, and it feels like Stuart was saying, it feels like love. How often do we have a conversation with people when they're not in judgment, when they're not trying to fix you, when they're not trying to get their point across? And that taught me such a huge lesson that I used to think it was, coaching was, 80% talking and pointing people and 20% presence. It's the other way around. It's 80% how we show up in that space is, in my opinion, the biggest gift that we can give anybody. And that's how life, that's how we make a difference. We show up as love. We show up as our true self. And we see people as their true self. And it's the soul talking to the soul instead of the head talking to the head.
Yeah.
We recognize, in those moments, we recognize our shared being. That's what it is.
It's beautiful. We got Stuart crying again, I think. That was beautiful, Stuart. I mean, that was beautiful. What's your name? Stef. That was so beautiful, Stef. Yeah, right on, right? Ah,
We
I
can
need
feel
to, yeah, go ahead.
we can feel it now in this
Yeah.
space. Feel it.
Yeah.
That's the proof of the pudding. That's where the rubber hits the road. Is
Proof of the pudding,
yeah.
where the rubber hits the road. It's in the feeling. Yeah. Wow. And here's something too, like I would judge myself when I wouldn't be in that feeling as much as I think I should be or I wanted to be. And what I realized was all I had to do was be grateful for the moments I am there. Because it's not like a knob you can turn on or off. But it seems to be on more the more we appreciate that space, the more we recognize and seeing people transform in front of you or hearing about a transformative experience is what has kept us all in this game. Because, wow, it's just, is there anything any better? I mean, can you have anything, all the riches in the world?
Yeah.
You could give me a mansion, a yacht, an island. Nothing can compare to that feeling of really connecting with someone, with their soul. It doesn't matter where they've been, what their intellect has to say, what they've learned. You know, what matters is the connection. And you have to be in a really quiet mind to feel that. And we could always get back there. So like, you know, one of you was saying, I think Kinnaird earlier, maybe it was Saga, somebody was saying that, you know, you notice that shift in consciousness that Stef spoke about. You notice when, oops, got caught up in my thinking, whoops, and then you're back. We can't do anything when we're not noticing it, but when we notice it, that's the gift. That's wisdom, tapping us on the shoulder, saying, let it go, give it up, come back to the moment, come back to the present. And we are over our 90 minutes, and thank you all for staying so long. You're all going to get a recording of this. It was absolutely precious.
Bless you all, each and every one of you. It's been such a sacred space, such a sacred gift, this 90
Sacred space. I love that. Yeah.
to be with you in this conversation. There's nothing better. There is nothing better.
Yeah. And thank you to Barb Patterson, who said, you ought to call Stef and check out, you know, what he's doing in this world.
I'll pay her later.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's like thanking the universe for providing. It always provides. If we have an inspiration, I have found that the universe somehow provides a pathway to bring that inspiration into fruition. Yeah.
And you are the right people, you know.
And you are the right people. Yeah, the right people show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting how life works
you.
like that.
Thank you all. Hopefully we'll get to see you again soon. That would be really good. That would be really nice. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.